Hey guys, your girl Nia J here. And I'm here with the wonderful
Pamela and Nicole. What's up?
We got another episode of Dynasty Queens coming right up. But really quickly before we get started, today's episode was brought to you by our official sponsor, Fashion Nova. Make sure you go and check out their new hot summer fashions. Get that 40% off, those cute trendy new looks and styles. And don't forget to scan the QR code right here at the bottom of the screen. Tell them your girl Nia J sent you too.
Ew.
Okay, so.
Oh, honey.
All right. You know, I remember prior we kind of touched base on like the whole mental health situation.
Yeah.
So I wanted us to revisit that, and you know, people go through things in life. So I had a question for you.
What's up?
When it comes to like mental health and awareness, do you think that sometimes people, when they're going through things, what are some of the signs when people are like hiding, you know, what's really going on?
You know, honestly, from experience and just being around people that have things going on,
Mm-hmm.
they tend to be very anxious.
Okay.
For one, that I noticed. And then for two, it's a lot of the blame game is what I call it. Like, oh, it's this person's fault. It's never like their fault, or it's just kind of like the term like victimizing other people.
Okay.
And just putting that on other people. That way, you know, it's not so like the attention is not so much onto them.
Not so much on them.
Yeah.
So I guess with that being said, we have to be able to like differentiate between someone who's being a complete asshole and someone who's actually going through like a mental crisis. And that can be hard to do because we all have like our own stuff that we deal with.
Yeah, for sure. Right?
In life. So I'm trying to think and wonder, you know, what are some ways that we can kind of talk to people that we love and care about and figure out how we can help them without making them seem weak? Because I know a lot of people, a lot of time, they don't like to come and ask for help.
Right.
You know, it doesn't make you seem weak, but in their mind, it can. So what are some things that we can do to kind of like coax and be like, hey, you know, let me figure out what's going on with you without being so like abrasive with
it? A really great way of dealing with that, you can give that person like a journal. Just give them a blank like notebook or something, like a journal that has something that, you know, they like. That way it'll make them and motivate them to write down their feelings and anything that's really troubling them at that point in time.
Okay.
I think that would be a good thing to start with.
The journal.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. To go with that, I would also suggest like you can always take somebody to the side and be like, hey, without everybody around, to be like, hey, not really trying to pry, but it just seems like some things are off. Okay. So, you know, you can let them know. You can always talk to me. You can let me know what's going on. Facts. And I feel that's like a softer way to lead into that conversation, opposed to saying like, hey, your energy is completely off. What the hell is going on with you? So I think there are different ways to, you know, to talk to that loved one, talk to that person and try to help, you know, coax them through whatever they're dealing with. You know, there's a lot of crazy stuff that's going on since the pandemic. People have lost jobs and lost homes, and, you know, families have been broken. So there's really a lot going on, and I feel that people need counseling now more so than ever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you real quick in regards to that. So I know you didn't mention, you know, pulling the person to the side. Now, let me just plot twist you real quick. What if this is someone that is very, you know, hard to deal with, very hard to just talk to, even like something as calm and simple as that, which you said would be like enough to set them off? What would be plan B in that regard?
Like to not set them off, you're saying? Like, so they don't get upset?
So don't trigger, to not trigger them.
I think it's all about your delivery. Okay. I think it's all about your delivery of that person, to make sure that they're not offended. Or if they do, you know, get offended, you can kind of like reach out and be like, hey, you know, I wasn't trying to piss you off. I'm just want to let you know that I'm here. I think it's certain like keywords or phrases you can use. Let somebody know like, hey, I'm here for you. You can talk to me. You know, don't feel ashamed if you're going through some mental crisis, because I feel at some point in time we all have been there. For sure. You know, we've all been close to our breaking points, and I feel that it's really all about your delivery and how you approach that person. Absolutely. I do remember like when we kind of touched this topic before, we talked about like how inadequate the numbers of like people of color are that go, go to therapy opposed to other, ethnic groups or whatever. So, unfortunately, there's a stigma in our community that going to therapy makes you weak. It makes you a quack. It makes you crazy.
Right.
And I also think it's a matter of finding the right therapist to go to, like really doing your research and your due diligence. And I would say personally, you may want to test a couple of them out, maybe one or two.
Oh, yeah. That's always a great idea.
Yeah. Go to like a session and see if you can relate to that person you're talking to. And if not, then go back through, your provider and see if they can find another person for you.
For sure. And, like just like any kind of relationship that you make with anyone, a therapist to client relationship is very important because you're being as vulnerable as you possibly can with someone you barely know. So if the vibe is there at the very get, you can definitely like do 2 or 3 sessions just to see, if that's something that you would be able to manage.
Right.
But same like a person that you're just meeting and the vibe is off, you don't go back to that person. So same with the therapist. If the vibe is just not there or they're just not really, I guess, digging deep enough to really get to the root of the issue, then yeah, I agree with you. Like definitely find someone different.
Yeah. I think another problem with people of color when it comes to getting therapy is they may not have the insurance. And sometimes the therapist out of pocket can be really, really pricey.
Oh, yeah.
So I have not a solution, but I have some like ways I think that can alleviate that. What would you say for those who don't have insurance? Like what are some other routes you can take to get some help?
For sure. So just personally being through therapy, it is very pricey. Even with insurance, some therapists do not take insurance at all.
Right.
You can always go to your local church and talk to someone. They usually advise you and then they give you free advice as well. So that's always an option to go to if you're religious and you do attend a church, to attend your church and ask for information for counseling.
Right. For sure. I agree. I feel like regardless, there's no excuse. There's always somebody that you can talk to. And I know that, suicides have been rampant.
Yes.
And it's just, I feel like after the pandemic, a lot of people kind of like sat and thought about the ways their life wasn't going, in the direction that they wanted to go to. But I really feel that some natural remedies to help with, maybe some slight depression, I'm not a clinical psychologist or doctor or anything like that, but some things that help me, like if I'm just going through something, like walking outside, exercise as well. Cardio actually does help with anxiety and with depression. That's been, clinically proven. Yeah, for sure. So I always feel if I'm having a bad day, sometimes I still push myself to go to the gym and work out. And then I feel like a sense of like, what do I call it? My head feels clear. When I'm like in the middle of a workout session, I start to feel like euphoria. Yeah. It's almost like a high. And that's your natural body telling you that, hey, this feels good. I'm releasing,
endorphins
and all that good stuff.
For sure.
That definitely does help to some extent. But I do think that some people do need possibly real therapy and possibly even medication.
Yeah, just depending on like the situation.
Yeah.
Let me ask you something. As far as, I talked to my mom about this a lot, as far as like mental health. Back in the day, like the boomers and everything, I feel like back then, like people of color, it was just kind of like, oh, you're just acting out. Or you're just in a bad mood. Like it wasn't taken seriously. 1.
Yeah.
2, no one really had the funds like we were just talking about to really go and get clinically diagnosed with something.
Yeah.
3, segregation, so there's a lot of factors. And I really feel like our up and coming elderly do suffer from a lot more mental illness.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Than like the millennials coming up. What do you think about that?
I agree. I also feel like a lot of people who may have gone, to war or whatever may have not gotten all of the proper treatment and care. Yeah. I know it was so many vets and stuff. I know they have facilities, but, there's always people that slip through the cracks. So, when it comes to stuff like that, I mean, especially with our elders of color, they really don't believe in, they really don't believe in therapy. And it's sad to say, but I feel like ever since, you mentioned like back in the day, like oppression and segregation and stuff like that, we kind of been, taught to be strong and just like deal with it. So I just want to be the first one to say, you don't have to sit there and deal with it
at all.
You can talk to somebody about it. If you don't have the funds to see a therapist, then you can go to, like a local church or pastor. And then even further than that, if you're really down and out, they have the suicide hotline too, that you can call and just have somebody to talk to as well.
For sure. I know growing up too, like we were talking about the boomers and everything. My mom raised me to like, if you're in pain, get over it. If something's wrong, get over it. You can work through it. And honestly, that's built part of my character. I don't really complain about much because I can get through it. You know what I'm saying? But as an adult and growing into like adulthood, there have been some things that I just really physically couldn't and emotionally couldn't handle.
Yeah.
To where I'm like, what's wrong with me?
Right.
So I actually did seek therapy to just kind of figure out myself. Because sometimes you don't really know. You think you know yourself, but you don't know yourself. Like you're going through things in your head and it's hard to explain out loud and what's going on. And I think that's really what people struggle with that are dealing with mental illness and they just don't realize how to speak out loud about exactly what's going on.
Yeah, about exactly what's going on.
And
there's so many levels of it. I know depression is probably one of the more prevalent ones that people deal with. Anxiety, panic attacks, all of that kind of stuff. How do you feel about medication or medicating people who are going through, a mental crisis? Should it be just like a temporary thing or long term?
I definitely think it should be a temporary thing because I'm one of these where you have to find an outlet for something. Like if you're dealing with something, find like your happy space or at least try to find your happy space and just progress with it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if you just have such a difficult time getting there, medication definitely is an option. But I feel like after a while, if you're on that medicine, maybe a month or 2 or 3, just whatever short-term time frame that you're on it, you should be able to focus more on like what exactly made you happy in that time frame before all of this happened, and work towards that. You know what I mean?
That makes sense.
What about you?
I think something that I've seen like on the internet and television is they have like those smash sessions, like where a couple people enroll and you can just like break objects and stuff. You can break glass and smash things and get your anger out and stuff like that. Sometimes things like that can be therapeutic, just saying like, just,
For sure.
So many things you can do. I've even heard like yoga, and I really haven't tapped into that yet, but I hear a lot of people, you have to think like monks and stuff like that. Like they know how to center themselves and they get in tune with one. So I think yoga is also a way that you can kind of help with like anxiety and stuff. Now, as far as like the stuff that's out there, like schizophrenia and bipolar, I feel like medication would be needed. And I feel like we shouldn't, restrict ourselves. If you are going through something like schizophrenia, medication is needed.
Oh, for sure.
You have to take medication. There's no way you're not going to be able to function. I feel that doctors are put here in order to be able to help people. And I think some medications are needed. Now, if it's just like anxiety or something, there's ways to cope. But I'm not going to be the one to judge those who have to take medication. You just want to be really careful because I kind of know how some of that stuff goes. I've seen people that, for example, were diagnosed with anxiety and depression and were diagnosed to take like Xanax and stuff like that.
Right.
And seeing them wean off of it, it's almost the same as being weaned off of like heroin or crack or something. Oh. So it's really a touchy subject, and you really have to make sure if you're going to medicate with something like that, make sure it's short term. But they have other medications that are not going to have those, what's it called? The impact of being addicted.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So I would say speak with your psychiatrist in that regards into, taking medications that you're not going to get hooked on.
Yeah,
because that's the worst. That can cause a whole nother issue.
Absolutely.
When you're getting hooked on the medication. So I feel it's really a fine line that you have to walk. Unfortunately, it's just, it's really touchy.
And the thing is too about like all the mental illness, it's always coming from some kind of like other drug, like a chemical. It is a chemical imbalance. I mean, if you really think about it, any mental illness that you are like really going through, it is a chemical imbalance in the brain. So I've heard things like, marijuana is like a reason that people, if you smoke too much marijuana, you'll develop schizophrenia. I've read so many crazy things, but I mean, at the same time, I'm not sure how true that is, but
that sounds a little far-fetched.
A little far-fetched.
To me, very far-fetched.
And then like the same thing with, autism is another, I would put it and place it with mental illness as well. I definitely would.
Okay, that's interesting. Because I've never considered autism to be a mental illness.
Okay.
I've almost considered it to be kind of more like a disability or a challenge. Not a disability, more like a challenge.
And the only reason I say that I categorize autism with mental illness in a sense, I'm not saying that it's a bad mental illness. It's definitely different. Those people with autism, they're just super smart. Their intellect is just out of this world.
Right.
And when I think of, like a disability or something like that, I think more physical.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Versus mental. So I look at it that way. What do you think?
I don't know. I don't know if autism is clinically diagnosed as a mental illness. I've never heard that before. I don't know. I know it can be a disability though. It is classified as a disability because it kind of prohibits you from being able to function as a normal human. But I don't think people with autism are mentally ill because a lot of them can function. They just have to, they do have to go through a source of therapy or go to doctors when they're young. Sure. I heard, start the kids off young and they can grow up because I know a couple people who have autism and they function pretty well as adults.
Okay.
But if you don't get that therapy or whatever it is they do when you're young, it can really have, a really devastating effect later in life. The reason I don't consider it mental illness is because I feel mental illness, you're not born with it. I feel it's something that kind of develops over time. Okay. And autism, you're kind of born with it out though. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of
very true. Very true.
So I really don't know if it has something to do with like the genes, the way the DNA line up, but that's a whole different, because people with autism can be perfectly happy. They don't have to be depressed or anything like that.
Very true. Very true.
But all of it has a fine line,
This is true. I feel like it might be like in like both, like a gray area. You know what I mean? Like I said, nothing bad about it. It's just, there's just different, like mental illness, not saying it's a negative thing all the time, but there are different aspects to mental illness. So, as long as you're getting treatment and, therapy, like you're saying, that's, I think, reason why I would like put it in that category.
Okay.
Because it is like you do have to get therapy and other things. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So
I've just never thought of it that way. But that's an interesting perspective. Because now we're talking, people with other mental disorders like you have Down syndrome and you have all these other things. Like I don't think any of that's classified as mental illness.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Because I feel a lot of the time with mental illness it has to be triggered.
No, I feel that.
Like I would say PTSD is definitely a mental illness
for sure.
Any type of stress related disorders, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, people who suffer from like severe anxiety and panic attacks.
Right.
And now don't get me wrong, all of us can experience a little bit of it at some point, because I know I've had panic attacks at points in time, and I used to have really severe anxiety.
Same. For sure.
So I don't think that I'm just letting people know that there's always a way through.
Yes.
You don't have to be stuck in it and stigmatized and scared to tell people what you've been through. I think there's always a way out.
Absolutely.
But like I said, what's worked for me is definitely working out. Exercise and working out definitely helps out with my anxiety, like tenfold, like for me.
Yes.
But that's my story.
Of course.
I can't speak on everybody's journey, but I just know what works for me.
Of course.
and I can't judge those who have more severe levels of it because you may need that therapy. I was able to, overcome with that. Now, if I were to stop working out altogether, who knows? I'd probably just be like basket case, just running around like crazy. But
right.
I just found what works for me.
And I love that. And see, I love that for you. For me, writing everything down. Like I have so many poems and things that I've written, just getting deep down. And some of it can be dark. We've all had those dark times and those dark moments where you don't really know how to describe what you're going through or what's going through your head. But I've had those, and I write everything down that I feel to a T.
Right.
And I'll go back, and here's my thing. I will, if I'm going through a really bad time, I'll go on my computer and I will type everything out. Every single, it'll be pages, girl. Like 15, 16 pages of just feelings. It might not even be poetry, but it's literally everything I feel that I don't know how to necessarily get out verbally.
Yeah.
I will write it down, and I will shut my computer. I'll put that file away. And I'll come back to it 6 months later to see if I feel the same. And if I can go back through and be like, you know what? I've overcome this.
Yeah.
Oh, let me work on this because I still feel this way about this situation.
Right.
This. And I just go through those pages and go through and analyze how I felt back in that time frame.
Yeah.
And relate it to present day. And that's helped a lot.
That. You guys hear that? Pam is over here spitting some gems.
You know,
that is so interesting. Like, I mean, okay, I've written stuff down before too, but the fact that you're actually doing like a follow-up and like saying, hey, do I still have the same emotion?
Yeah.
That means you're really in tune with yourself.
Absolutely. It's like a mental time capsule, if you will. You know what I mean?
Definitely. So, how do you feel about the issue of like suicide?
You know, honestly, as a mom and as a mom of a teenager, it's, you know, it's crazy to see that there's youth out here that they don't feel comfortable enough to say, hey, I need help, you know, and especially with children going through, you know, so many changes, you know, with the, you know, LGBTQ community, like a lot of children are not comfortable enough to be like, hey, coming out or saying, hey, this is who I am and sticking to this is what I want to be. This is, you know, because I feel like sometimes kids, you know, they go through phases and it's like, oh, I don't know, you know, but some children it's instilled. They know who they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's hard. And at the same time, it's easy. It's easier now than it was for us. You know,
Very true.
You know, our queer friends come out, it would be accepted, but it would still be like frowned upon, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Now, back in the boomer times, no.
That was non-existent.
No.
So
that was
people were, you know, in the closet and stuff.
You know, and got beat up. But like now it's like, it's more acceptable, but kids are still scared.
And also the bullying too. Bullying has a huge impact with the mental health of children. And a lot of kids, I've been watching like documentaries and stuff like, you know, on Netflix and Hulu or whatever. And talking about like 11-year-old children, 8-year-old kids who are committing suicide because they're being bullied, either cyberbullying or directly in the classroom.
Yeah.
And not talking to their parents. So I really feel that in that regard, I feel the counselors on the campus should be doing a better job of kind of like having an open eye to what's going on.
Okay.
You know, I think it's a counselor's job to kind of scope the scene. And if you see someone getting harassed or bullied in the hallway, take them into your office. They don't always have to just be sent there. Like, do your, like, you know what I'm saying? Do your job. I feel like the teachers and the counselors should be more hands-on, you know? And I also feel, I like how some of the platforms are going to stop kids under a certain age from being able to log on because,
I love that.
You know,
Absolutely
I think so many lives could have been saved. So many mental crises could have been contained if it wasn't for what is social media at a certain age.
Of course.
Because what is it? Is it Facebook, like Meta is stopping at like 17?
17, yeah.
Yeah. That's about right.
You know, and it's crazy too, like you're mentioning the social media aspect. Also, I think that other platforms need to have like some kind of ban, not like ban, but just like a restriction, if you will, on things. Because kids can, you know, if they're in that moment and they're mentally just like, they're ready to go.
Right.
They can Google and look
how to
up
commit
how
suicide, how to shoot a gun and blow my brains out, you know, stuff like that. So
it's terrible stuff.
We really have to do our part with this generation on helping raise them better because, you know, I feel like if we were to be more hands-on, some of this stuff could be contained.
Agreed. I completely agree. That's just how
I feel. You know, I feel like next time we should actually have a a clinical, either like a psychologist or psychiatrist, we need to have somebody, a doctor, come onto the show that we can talk to about this kind of stuff and give you guys another update, because, we're not, in that field. We're just speaking off of experience and how we feel. Also, if we have any psychiatrists or psychologists that are watching, please feel free to comment and let us know, what are some ways people can cope with these disorders we've been discussing.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'd love to hear it. This has been a more heavy topic, but still it needs to be addressed. So yeah,
definitely. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Also let us know, let your friends know,
right.
Let's make this a whole community conversation.
Yeah.
Raise awareness and everything.
Right. We try to cover all bases, entertainment, some more stuff that can teach you guys something. So, here we are, being vulnerable, talking to you guys. Yes. So thank you for welcoming us, and tuning in. So until next time, this is Nia J.
And I'm Pamela Nicole.
And this has been another episode of
Dynasty Queens.